biceps, it isn't a contract and legal requirement every single time we appear on camera. It's going to make sure that they get in. It is important. It is a legal requirement. Got to make sure that the lawyers are happy. The boxes have been ticked. The co-host, the co-founder, the co-breather of air, the co-wearer of clothes in this very room, the master of disaster, the king of sting, the count of Monte Cristo, Thunderlips, the ultimate male. It gets me every time. I was like, I'm not going to laugh this time, but it still got me. I was like, he's going to do the mouth thing. And you did. It is the winner of the Dave Stockbridge of the Year Award. You can see it in the back there. It is none other than Dave, your friend and mine. It is Dave Stockbridge, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the very warm welcome, as always, Hollywood Matt Connolly. And tonight we are discussing the year that was at AWE. So big year. Three big events during the course of this year, and I thought it'd be great for us just to kind of recap and let everybody know what it is that we've done, and maybe a little bit about what we're planning for 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had three major events that we ran throughout the year of 2024, and it was a very productive year. We had some interesting stories, some adjustments that we made from the pay-per-view models, and we changed what we were doing in terms of the big setups with what we had with AWE2, which was in the Adelaide Oval last year. And then we changed up a bit. We went with the Underground series right at the end of last year, and we sort of kept that going into our tournament series.
So there's a little bit of AWE lore there, isn't there? So we did have that big event, the pay-per-view event at the Adelaide Oval, July. Well, there we go. There we go.
We were thinking that might happen at some point.
July 2023, and a very successful event. Looked great on screen, and sent some tremors through the arm wrestling world. And so as soon as our newly crowned champion, Todd Hutchings, stepped off the plane, very shortly thereafter, there was a contract put in front of him and a pen in his hand, and he was the very first signing, I believe, to the what's now become known as the Core Sports contract. So all of a sudden, we no longer had access not just to our new champion, Todd Hutchings, so there would be no defense of the AWE Intercontinental belt in its present form at the time. But same thing happened, of course, with the many of the top athletes from around the world. So we all of a sudden, after a very successful AWE2, where we featured Jordan Sill, we had Artem Taranenko over from the US. We, of course, had Todd Hutchings make the way over. So big international cast of athletes, really taking the best that the Oceanic region had to offer, and pitting it against some of the top international talent. And the success, unfortunately, we were a victim of our own success with respect to that event, and meant that it seemed to have accelerated the plans of some of those promoters overseas who may have already had these ideas, but all of a sudden found reason to accelerate that whole process. And so we found ourselves all of a sudden in the contracts era as a result of AWE2, and that meant that we had some navel gazing to do. We really had to some navel gazing.
I don't think I've heard that before.
You haven't heard that one? Okay, so where you kind of look at your own navel and think, what do I do next? And so in the context of all that had occurred in the wash up of AWE2, we really didn't have the international talent available to us to sustain a pay-per-view event, because, as we know, if you don't have a handful of those top names, it becomes very difficult to sell pay-per-views, and without those pay-per-view sales, it becomes very difficult to pay for the talent to jump on a plane and fly halfway around the world. So, let alone 3 or 4 of those athletes. So, when the revenue would have essentially dried up, we had to look around and think, well, what else is it that we can do for the sport? And it was really, let's, with our limited resources, try to provide a platform so that local athletes have something to aspire to, so that we can maybe shine a light on them and let the rest of the world know what they're doing, and capture some of the attention of the international market, so that these athletes had a pathway to the elite. And so we kind of set about finding some of that top local talent through our T-Series events, which the first was held in this very building, actually, at AWE headquarters, and the second was at the very beginning of this year, which is the first of those three big events you were talking about at the top of this podcast, which was AWE T-Series 2, and that was at Helensville in the southeast corner of Queensland. It was a Australia Day, which is a big public holiday here in Australia, a bit like your 4th of July in America. And so it's our national holiday, and we went to one of the most Australian looking locations that you could find at the Helensville Hotel, and put on an event where it was about 38 degrees and about 90% humidity, so or about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and very humid. It had rained I think about 10 or 11 mils in the week leading up to that event. The grass was literally growing around you. You could see the grass growing around you. It was so hot and so humid, but that didn't stop a great gaggle of some of the best rising talent we had coming to the event. So we had talent come all the way from Perth and of course around Queensland, making their way from all parts of Queensland and New South Wales and Victoria, and we're able to showcase some of the top talent in the country on that card and in that event.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a tournament structure that anybody could enter, with decent prize money as well, which is unique for the tournament structures here in Australia. We don't usually get prize money. Normally it's a trophy and a handshake, or just a handshake sometimes. Well, yeah, or just no handshake for you. You gotta win twice to get the handshake. But so yes, we had the T-Series. It was the tournament structure. Anybody could enter that. We saw a fleet of people from all around Queensland, and as you mentioned, several people came from interstate as well, which was a real treat and a delight. Especially Declan, who came all the way from Perth to compete. He brought his dad along, and they both had a great time. He did quite well in the tournament as well, which was great to see, because the last thing you'd want is to go all the way to the complete other side of the country and get like 0-2. So he did quite well. And then we had a couple of super matches on that as well. So we had Bowen Contado versus Brett Coots on the left arm, and there was also it was Taryn Broad and Brett Coots on right arm, which were two very good matches. And Brett unfortunately sustaining a pec injury right on the very last moment of the pin for the win against Taryn. I think it was 1-4, and it was like I believe he was up 3-0. He was in a dominant position, and just for that final surge to get that last inch is when he did the injury. It was like, but at least that happened then. It wasn't early in the match, but still, you'd hate to get an injury for anybody. It did allow him the opportunity to take the shirt off, though, which did attract a lot of.
All of a sudden, there was a lot more female attention.
There was. They weren't there 2 seconds before that.
They swarmed the tables. All of a sudden, they had a newfound interest in arm wrestling. These middle-aged women.
I don't know where they came from. They must have been in the pub or something
The whole time.
Yeah, just looking out. Is he going? Oh, go! And then there was like a large circle of these, and they were very nonchalantly trying to make it look like they weren't completely just staring at Brett.
A lot of side watching,
that's right. They very angled themselves to have a conversation where they could both see.
Casually goes over from time to time.
That's right.
Yeah. So Brett is a very impressive looking human being.
Absolutely.
And like a fine wine, the older he gets, the bigger and stronger he appears as well. And I think for the last really this year was a real coming out for, is that the right term?
I don't know. That's probably not.
Brett probably won't like that term, but it was a re-emergence of Brett Coots on the scene here in Australia, who had had been dominant in Australia for many, many years, and a multiple national champion here in Australia, and had even enjoyed international success. Famously won, I think it was $10,000 US in the Philippines in a match some years ago as well. So Brett Coots is the stuff that arm wrestling legends are made of in Australia. But he did go quiet over COVID, and it seemed to me he was just looking for the right motivation to get back into it. And we approached him, I think, for AWE 1, and he just wasn't ready at the time. But he obviously was training, and we saw him make his comeback to elite arm wrestling through AWE, and this year I think we've seen him at almost every event we've held.
Yeah, it's so good to see him back, and he's such a icon in Australian arm wrestling. He's there right at the very start. I mean, he's been doing it for 17 years, so back before there was any federations, before there was any major tournaments, him and a couple of other guys were cruising around the country and just destroying everyone. Which is probably still true today. He's still in a position where he's right at that top end in the Australian scene. So good to see him back. And he entered into the T Series 1 tournament here. I believe he won the right hand. No, he won the left hand and then came second in the right hand to Lachlan Carpenter. But he may have been facing an injury then as well. Unfortunately, he seems to have had an unlucky run the last couple of years with some injuries. But we saw him at AWE T Series 2, which was up in Queensland, as you mentioned, and he had the super matches up there with Taran, which he won comfortably on the right hand, and he also had the victory over Bowen Cantado, who is a fantastic left arm puller and a fiery, exciting young man to watch. And I've gone back to watch that match several times, and it's one of the ones that I will use as here's a fun thing to watch in arm wrestling. Like, have a look at these two guys, because it's you're never going to get a boring match with Bowen Cantado.
No, absolutely not. And I think so. For those that aren't familiar with Bowen Cantado is an Australian wood chopping champion, a former champion. His family have spent a lot of time around that sport. I believe his brother is a current champion, so he's deceptively large. He's 6'5". But not too heavy set. So he I think he sits around that kind of 115-ish.
He probably sits around 100, I think.
Oh, is he that large? Yeah.
You said deceptively large, though.
Yeah. And when you stand next to him, you realize he's dwarfing almost everybody around him. But he can sneak into a heavyweight category for somebody who is so big, which makes him very dangerous.
That's right.
With those levers. And we've been fortunate enough to be able to feature Bowen on several occasions. And that matchup with Brett, it's very interesting in talking about Brett, because as much as he's performed so well at AWE events over the last year or so now, he's not a right hand puller by preference. His strongest arm is his left. So and of course it's difficult for him to find people at his level, and so occasionally, once every few years, there emerges a talent that's willing to take Brett Coots on left, and Bowen Cantado has been that athlete. It came so close on a couple of occasions. It seemed that the young challenger, Bowen Cantado, might have just got it across the line, but Brett has some spectacular bicep strength.
It's ridiculous.
Once he gets a hold, and once he finds his position, he is very, very difficult.
Should I bring that up? Should we talk through it? Because that's one of my favorite matches.
It is. It's a great match, and of course, so AWE have the 2 YouTube channels. So some of these matchups that we are talking about features on AWE Underground, and others are on AWE T Series. Now, the reason why we've got those 2 channels is because just simply the way that the algorithm works. With our main channel, which is AWE Underground, we found that was being a little sandbagged by some of the underperforming videos that we'd put up there of matches of some of our lesser known talent. And so, or some of those matches with some of that talent that was just less consequential, but we wanted to give that that content at home, and so we switched it on to the other channel just so arm wrestling purists and fans from around the world can still tune in and even if they weren't interested in the time, if they just want to retrospectively revisit some of these matchups, they can, and that's what Matt has just got up on the screen. So there's young Bowen Cantado, young man as well. He's very early 20s.
These are the highlights just leading into to get a bit of a teaser, a bit of a taste as what to expect in the match. But look, there's Brett looking as casual as you could imagine, as he always does when he's holding one of the strongest left arm pullers in the country. But you can see it was a hot day, and it was there was flies hanging around. It was we had a lot of elements they had to deal with here, but both guys are very switched on. Bowen especially was very much wanting to get a victory here to prove his left-hand status in Australia, and there's no better challenge against anybody that is going to be the perfect measuring stick than Brett Coots. If you've got what it takes, you're going to be like, oh, we'll start with Brett, because if you can actually beat Brett, then maybe you're going to be looking at international elite matches, because he is a superstar on left hand.
And I think it was around Christmas time last year when we were in the final throes of getting this event together, and Lachlan Adair was in the mix for this matchup to really decide who is the strongest man on left in Australia, and it would have been Brett Coots versus Lachlan Adair, but those contractual issues, they reared their ugly head here, even here on the other side of the world. The tentacles and restrictions that apply to those contracts know no end, and Lachlan was not able to be available for us for this matchup, and but Bowen Cantado saw it as a great opportunity because he actually felt that he should have been the man that had that opportunity from the get-go. From what I understand, Bowen was the national champion on left, and so and that at a nationals that wasn't that was absent of Brett Coots, and so Bowen was looking for that chance to really solidify himself as the top man on left. And as you can see, it was no pushover for Brett. He had a lot of work to do, and he kind of looks over to the camera just a little bit shyly, thinking, "Okay, that was a little bit harder than what I was expecting." And
absolutely, I just wanted to highlight just the because there were so many things that happened in that moment there. So with the match, so we've got the start. Bowen is a low hand top roller. You can see the positioning that he's got there. He's in his ideal spot, and he's giving it absolutely everything and rocking back and forth with power against Brett, who has unbelievable stopping power, and that's what he's utilizing there, bringing it back to the center, and then Bowen holding Brett's surges and then using everything he has right there, trying to increase his leverage. Brett is starting to lose his wrist now.
Lost his wrist, yeah.
He comes forwards into a flop press, which I didn't know he could do, and gets the flop press win, which is, just outrageous. I've never seen Brett do that before.
Well, there's a lot of low hand pressure on the wrist as well as he was coming through. So, he did have that flop press positioning, but as he's come through, you can kind of see he's redirected all of the pressure to the wrist of Bowen Cantado there, and got that pin, and with some relief, you get the sense as well.
Yeah, absolutely. He was losing his hand. His hand was getting kicked back by the relentless attack from Bowen Cantado, and we can see the second round here.
But Bowen's very fidgety and explosive, and so.
We'll get to the start.
Brett is much more calm in the setup, isn't he?
He is. He knows what he wants to get. If he gets it, he's quite happy to just wait. And we'll see another explosion from Bowen Cantado here, bouncing on Brett's. He is kicking Brett's wrist back, but he managed to keep it straight there. He's gone again with the flop press, loses the hand, comes back to the center, goes flop press again. Bowen holding with everything he's got on his bicep, but unable to contain the power of Brett Coots there.
And there you see Brett's kind of indicating that there might have been a twinge in that niggly peck of his. So Brett, I liken Brett to just a high performance supercar. And when he's on song, he's unstoppable. But he can easily, he's just as susceptible to blow a gasket or just something. And for many athletes, that's their only hope, that Brett gets injured, and through the deployment of all of that horsepower, that one of these injuries reemerges and serves to assist them.
So Bowen actually doing something completely different here in this last round. He's gone for a press himself. He's got his shoulder perfectly in a line, and look at the effort Bretton's putting in there to hold him with a flop wrist press. He brings it back and gets through for the win over Bowen Contado. What an amazing match. Incredible adjustments from Brett there. And that's one of those things, if you do lose your wrist, you would hope that you have some sort of other option at play, which Brett Coots obviously has found there to win that match.
And so both gentlemen agreed to call it a day on that occasion, which was very sportsmanlike of Bowen, because Brett was 3-0 at that point in time. I think it's first to 4 technically.
I can't remember what it was, but I know that they were quite happy to call Brett the winner for that one. Yeah.
So it was, but Bowen Contado, a superstar of the future there, and again, great to see a young athlete cross over from their chosen sport and find their way into arm wrestling and enjoy great success. So it seems that increasingly we're getting the strongmen, we're getting the wood choppers, we're getting people from combat sports making their way over to arm wrestling and enjoying success.
Bench press as well with Ashley Huerta.
Yeah.
It's a 317 kilo bench press, world champion, a world record holder, and getting into the sport of arm wrestling as well.
As I cast my mind over 2024, I think some of the great talent that we have been able to have on AWE cards, and you've got Brett Coots, who's got a 17-year history in the sport, who's multiple national champion on both right and left at heavyweight and super heavyweight. We've got young sporting stars in their own respective fields making their way over, like Bowen Contado. And then when we consider Ashley Huerta, who has been nominated for New Zealand Woman of the Year, has experienced her own health battles there, having experienced that stroke just a couple of years ago, and then coming back and becoming the strongest female bench presser in the world, being the first woman in the world to bench press. And that was 1 year ago today, exactly.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that record was set 317.5 kilograms, 700 pounds. Just absolutely amazing. And to see talent like that on AWE cards is great. And I would also hope that, there's other people that are talented within their own respective disciplines that are now looking at AWE as a real possibility for their first arm wrestling matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one of the exciting things that I heard from a lot of the athletes throughout the tournament side of things with the T Series was, because we had the prize money in play, and there was prize money for every division, and several people entered multiple categories, both right and left hands. And I think SK from Queensland walked away with like $800 or something, because he won or came second in like 5 different classes. Right hand and left hand in the under 70s and then under 95s. So yeah, he was the big winner. But I specifically remember when Lachlan Carpet, I think he handed over the money, and he said, I think it's the first time I've ever been paid in arm wrestling.
I think he walked away with close to $1,500 from the weekend. Lachlan Carpenter also won T Series 1. So having beaten Brett Coots, or I think Brett might have been even a bit injured on his way to the finals, and then famously went to Queensland for T Series 2 and beat Ryan Bowen.
He did.
And so that created somewhat of a stir. And so Lachlan Carpenter is very much a superstar of the future, and proved to the world on that occasion that he is ready for the big time.
Yeah, absolutely. He also went over to the Arizona State Championships as well throughout. I think it was this year with Mario Tambarkas, who goes every year. It's a fantastic
I believe
tournament.
they're training partners, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so Tim Tolmage runs. I think it's both the Washington State and the Arizona State titles.
Yep.
He's one of the most prominent referees you'll see around at all of the biggest events. He'll always be one of the referees there. He's very, very experienced. He's an arm wrestler as well, but he puts on the Arizona State titles and the Washington State titles. And yeah, so Mario Tambarkas is featured heavily in those, and Lachlan Carpenter, I believe, went along and performed fantastic. I think he came second in his weight class. So, and that's against some of the top US pullers that are over there, which is, you know, showing his level. And I think from that point, he has actually increased in size about 30%. So he's looking absolutely enormous at the moment.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he's a big human being, and a strong young man, and still very young, and it's got big future.
Yeah, for sure.
Big future. So yeah, it's exciting unearthing some of this talent, showing it to the world, isn't it? It's so it's been quite the journey this year. I think our first event for this year was originally planned to maybe have been the event with the Indians, or was it late last year, or the first? It was the one after AWE too, and of course we had our difficulties in getting all of the talent here in Australia in time for that event, and so kind of scrapped that event and thought, you know what, we'll go to the grassroots, we'll go to the local talent, we'll shine a light on them, and see what we can show the world essentially, and that was how T Series 1 came about, and within a few months of so T Series 1, just to wrap up, obviously one of the big highlights was Brett and Bowen on left hand. Right hand, any surprises?
For Brett and Taryn? I had been training with Taryn leading up to that, and he let me use both arms to try to stop his hook, and I couldn't stop his hook with both my arms.
Wow.
And I was like, how the hell is anybody going to be able to beat that? And then Brett Coots just went, I'll show you how.
Hold my beer.
Yeah. And he rolled through Taryn's hook quite comfortably in every round, which I couldn't, it was almost like I couldn't believe what I was seeing, because I knew the level of strength that Taryn was at. And to think, like, if somebody is above that, like that's almost superhuman to me. Like, it was just astronomically strong.
In some respects, Taryn, Brett Coots is Taryn Broad's Everest, because they're very similar pullers, and but Brett's about 15% bigger, and so it's for Taryn to be able to even get a couple of stops there for him. He took a lot away from that and understood that, okay, well, there is a path, and if I give it some more thought, maybe there's a lane for me in the future, and realized, well, if that's the and Brett has emerged as very much the number two, having seated number two twice now in our last two events. Brett is very much the number two behind Rickard Borman in the AWE pantheon of athletes. So for Taryn Broad, who really is more comfortable at around 85 kilos, than he's not a heavyweight. He's a smaller guy in stature. I would say he's 5'8", 5'9". He's not a big 6 foot, 110, 115 kilo guy. So Taryn took a lot of positivity away from that, and it would have been great to see what his response might have been at our most recent event, but of course falling sick just 48 hours before the event and missing out ultimately on being able to show the world what he's got.
Yes, I know that it was devastating to him for the AWE Grand Prix 2. Yes, unfortunately, but there will be other opportunities, and we'll see lots more of Taryn Broad in the future. It's unfortunately that happens, and we've seen it happen many times with athletes in all sorts of combat sports, where right on the day, things can happen, and it's always devastating for not only the athlete and their team, their coaches, their family, their friends, their fans who have all come to see them compete, the promoter, their opponent, their opponent's team and fans. It's never a good thing. And it obviously he was desperately wanting to compete. Unfortunately, he was very sick. I think he was quite sick, to the point where he was sick for a few weeks. So I think he's still actually getting over that at this point, which is it's been quite a while now. But unfortunate timing for Taryn.
Very unfortunate, very unfortunate. And I guess to tie up that first event of the year, SK, as you touched on before, dominated in the lighter categories and really proved to everybody that he's one of the men to beat. And he walked away with almost as much prize money as Lachlan Carpenter on the day. So it was a great event. SK comes to Queensland from Korea, South Korea, and a very, very talented young man. And so we're looking forward to seeing more from him in 2025 as well.
I'm not sure what his real name is, but SK is the nickname that was given to him, and that's what we've been going with.
Yeah, I think it's
initials.
Yes. So
it works. It's easy to remember.
It's great. We appreciated it.
Yeah, I think it's cool. It's a good name. Yeah, and then so we ran into the next event, which was the Grand Prix, the first Grand Prix that we had, AWE Grand Prix 1.
Yeah.
Which was
very first part of our underground series.
Yeah, that's right.
So we had to kind of make it all gritty, and I think we had our first. It was at Marcus Satirai's shed, which is also one of the training venues for Kingpins in Queensland. So thank you very much, Marcus, for lending your venue. I don't think it's the first time we spent some time at Marcus.
No, we did we did the underground series up there in 2023, and then then we had AWE T Series 1 here in Adelaide, AWE T Series 2 in Queensland, and then AWE Grand Prix 1 in Marcus's shed again.
Thank you for the refresher. But don't mind the people at home. I kind of needed that
one. Yeah, but it is. I mean, if you're in the same venue, and there was similar pullers that competed on both cards, so it's quite easy to get them confused. But yeah, well, it was actually, I believe your idea was, why don't we just get the best possible people we can get from the Southern Hemisphere and put them all in a tournament structure, and we'll get eight of the best guys we can find, put them together, and we'll have a tournament and find out who's the best.
Yeah,
and that's what happened. That's what we did.
Yeah, and it was a tremendous success for us, because when we decided that this was the road that we were going to go down, and we were going to keep AWE alive, and we're just going to try and find a way whilst we're finding our way. And the thought of doing that was very much around, well, look, we can still answer these arm wrestling questions without having to spend a fortune, and without having a pay-per-view audience or that revenue to rely upon. How are we going to do this? And so we decided that we'd pivot towards free content, and so that's why you can see all of our matches within 24 48 hours. Typically all of our work is up there as soon as we can get it out there to the public. Although our last event might have taken a few extra days, but
it was bigger.
We appreciate the patience the arm wrestling world afforded us on that occasion, so thank you very much. And for those people that were sending death threats to Hollywood Matt Connolly, we do ask you if you could just ease up a bit, but it was free after all. But we got that event underway just so, and the other reason where we went with the tournament structure was very much because a point of difference in a world that's now, in an arm wrestling world that is now prioritizing super matches, and there is a great appeal to super matches, there's no doubt, but everybody's doing the super matches. And one of the difficulties with super matches taking place across all of these promotions around the world is that if you have a loss in a super match, then it can impact your next booking. It might impact whether or not you get another booking, for instance. But also, if you've got a match set against an opponent, and then you've taken on, say, with let's say hypothetically with Arm Gods, and then but you've got a match in beforehand with AWE a month or so before, and you lose that match, well, that can diminish the hype that Arm Gods might have got for their event. So you kind of make those guys a little bit upset, because they're investing in flights and accommodation and putting this match together. Also, they want to present their competitors in the very best possible light. And so, to experience a loss in a super match format can really inhibit an athlete's ability to get that next match on that next promotion. And so what we wanted to do was kind of remove ourselves from the super match market, so that we weren't competing with other promoters around that. So, for instance, if our athletes competed in an AWE event and through a 8-man double elimination structure, and they had a poor performance, or they got flash pinned in the first round and had a war in the second round but lost, it's not going to affect their ability to be able to step on a plane and compete around the world and have that next super match. It can just be put down to the day, the opponent, the wrong setup. There's a whole bunch of excuses an arm wrestler might have for why it didn't quite work on the day. But of course, those arm wrestlers that happen to have a good day, it can really be really be a springboard for them to accelerate their opportunities overseas.
Yeah, the thing that I really liked about, and the point of difference, as you said, with that tournament structure and double elimination especially, is that you see the start of the bracket where everyone is there, and then you see the storyline play out, and it's like, within an hour, the whole story has been told, and you've got your winner, and you've got, okay, well, this match was really exciting, this match was really exciting, this one was, 2 flash pins, and it's like, when did he get eliminated? Oh, you can go back and you can see it, you scroll back 10 minutes, it's like, oh, that's that match right there. So it was all laid out in front of you, and it was 1 hour of, I don't know, what was it, 16 matches or something, which took place in a very short period of time and between top level people. And it was something that you can easily go back and say, okay, look, here's the start, this is where we started with 8 people, this is how we got our winner, and it's right there, and you can see it all take place straight away. I know.
Should we bring that event?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, absolutely. But I remember a few years ago they had something called the Top 8 tournament, which was, but it was done like super matches, and it was held over months, and it was like they start with 8 guys, and then it was like, okay, this is the first match, and it's gonna be an event or whatever, and then it's like, but the next time you see them is in 4 months time, and it's like, and then somebody got injured, and then something else happened, and it was like, and then that match didn't even happen, and it was like, whereas this, it's like, okay, this is your 8 guys, here's the first match, here's the next one, here's the next one, here's the next one, here's the losers bracket, now he's eliminated, it's like within 20 minutes, you've now got 2 people eliminated. You're down to 6, know, and it's like, oh, geez, we're coming up to the quarterfinals here. Like, so.
Well, and we want to thank everybody because for all those people that have jumped on it, which is over 70,000 views on our first AWE Grand Prix event, it really gave us the courage to continue with that format, because it really did teach us that arm wrestling fans do love action. They also want to see everything from go to woe within a half hour, an hour. They don't want to be sitting around for 4 or 5 hours. They don't want to sit there and watch through a 45-minute setup. They just want to see great matches. They want to see a storyline play out before their very eyes, and to see the results come through. So
and that short time frame, which I don't think we were sort of like, oh, this will be something that we were expecting, but because it wrapped up within 60 minutes, it was like, it's very watchable. And we found that most people, that if you start watching it, you're probably going to watch the whole thing, because you get to see it all. You're seeing the progression of the matches right there, and it's like, you don't want to click off, because it's like, oh, I want to know who wins.
And it was first to pin, so it wasn't. Whereas our second event was first to 2, so it was literally a 25-minute. It was very episodal, and I think that is something, that's a little lesson that we learned, that if we can keep it episodal, and we can keep the it's easy to keep people's attention during that period of time. And our watch time for this video is excellent. People, once they've started watching this video, rarely do they drop away.
Yeah, so we had some of the best guys that we could find in the Southern Hemisphere, and you're seeing right here, this was the first matchup, and the number 1 seed for this was Matabarigi Hedamorris, who you see there with the facial tattoos, and 165 kilos, was 350 pounds or something, against Andy Boskowski from Melbourne, who was the underdog here. But he was one of those standout performers on the day.
Yeah.
And not only did he put up an enormous fight against some of the top guys, but he got several pins against people that he was quite the underdog on.
Yeah, Macho Rungi was our first Intercontinental Champion, having beaten Ryan Bowen at AWE Grand Prix 1, lost that title famously to Todd Hutchings at AWE Grand Prix 2, and was back here to pick up some AWE gold. Made his way over from New Zealand for this one, and he got the first pin there against Andy Boskowski, who is now coming back from back injury, I believe. And you can see he's been posting more and more of his training videos. So it's really good to see that Andy's getting back into form and getting back to full strength for 2025.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we were quite keen to have him back for AWE Grand Prix 2, but I believe he had a wedding on that weekend, or it wasn't his wedding, but it was his brother's or his best mate's wedding. It's like, I cannot miss that. Like, that's one of those things that if I miss that, I will be shunned by my family forever. So
this was a real field of superstars, certainly for those who follow Australian arm wrestling. On the right hand side here, you've got Gunter Bajkovs, who's a former Latvian, former European, and a former Australian heavyweight and super heavyweight champion, and now 50 years old, and as you can see, is in exceptional form. He's a beast of a man, and taking on the young South African prospect in Rickard Borman.
That's right. I think Rickard was 19 at this point in time, although he is elbow fouling there, but
I think they're just about to.
They're getting gripped up.
Yeah, I think they're getting.
No,
okay. That's a serious foul.
Yeah.
But anyway,
no one saw that.
With the win. There we go.
Moving on.
Just destroy that pad before anybody. All the evidence is destroyed.
That's right. But you see the speed of these matches. We've already had two, and we barely wrapped up the first sentence on the first one.
Yeah.
And so Ryan Bowen, I think he came in as the second seed, and he desperately wanted to get a victory over Brett Coots here. Thought that he had it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was called an elbow foul off the back, I believe, that happens in this match.
I believe it's 0-19 now. Brett Coots has not been defeated by Ryan Bowen, and Ryan almost had it. Look, he got within millimeters of the pin, and almost started the journey in terms of rectifying that record, but nope.
No, so they've gone to the strap, and one foul on Ryan coming off the back. So he's on one foul. They're going to do no strap. Okay, they're going to do a restart without the strap. It's been a while since I've watched this, but we get.
This is a heavier version of Ryan Bowen. This is close to 110 kilos. And
Brett
was actually the lightest man in this competition. I believe he came in here at close to 95 kilos, surprisingly.
Oh,
and again, Ryan's so close. Nope, off the back.
He got the pin, but it was an elbow foul.
So close on two occasions. Yeah. Ryan must be thinking, okay, third time's the charm. Yep. Feeling like he had everything he needed to really.
It's one of those things, because if you feel like you've won and then you've got to go again, it's like it can play with your body. Like, you've had that adrenaline dump of like, yes, I've got to do it again. Oh, I've already won.
Yeah, that adrenaline dump is a hard thing to deal with. And you can see all the tension. There we go.
I think Ethan did a good job here as the referee. His instructions were quite clear. He was despised in the comment section for some reason.
Yeah, it was a bit of pollen. And here we go.
Ryan sitting into the King's move, but again with the elbow foul.
So Ryan, who for most of that little matchup with Brett had his hand on the right side of the winning side of the table, just wasn't able to come away with his very first win against Brett Coots.
That's right. It was this close, close on three occasions, but unfortunately the elbow dropping off the back of the pad is what did him in.
And here we have Lachlan Carpenter, who we were talking about from his performance at T Series 1 just a few months earlier, having already beaten Ryan Bowen to walk away with the heavyweight prize money. Lachlan, who's been climbing the ranks, is taking on here Ryan Scott, who made his way all the way from Perth, and which is an overnight flight to Brisbane, if you're wondering. Like, it's like,
is it?
Yeah. I think he left it at close to 11 p.m. and arrived at about 5 or 6 a.m.
Wow.
The next morning. So made his way over, made the big flight, and really, this was Ryan's first performance in AWE, and we were super proud to have him there. And he's a former national champion, of course, as well, and one of those names that has featured at the top of our wish list for quite a long time. So it was absolutely fantastic to have Ryan appear at this event, and I mean, he's now in his 50s, I
think so,
and Lachlan Adair's place later, I think, showed us all that there's he's got that farmer strength, hasn't he?
I couldn't do anything to him at all.
Yeah, he is just outstanding, and still very, very much at the top of the tree here in Australia.
So good to have him in the tournament. And we hadn't seen a lot from him. COVID really shut down a lot of the arm wrestling side of things in several areas in Australia, particularly over in Western Australia and in Perth particularly. We hadn't seen much of Ryan Scott for the last couple of years, and he was ranked as #1 in the country, and then he was supposed
was that potential matchup between Lachlan Adair and
right.
Ryan Scott, wasn't it?
Yes. They actually, so this
during COVID.
It was during COVID. Yeah, this was the craziest thing, because Ryan Bowen flew to Perth to film the match, and then a couple of hours later, Lachlan Adair took the later flight and he flew over. And when he got there, they had changed a law, or they brought out some emergency announcement and said, anyone who's arrived within the last 4 hours or something, you must return back to your state. And you immediately you have to go straight to the airport. You've got to go. We've got a list of everyone who's come in. You need to go, or you'll get a massive fine. And of course, Lachlan's on that list.
Yeah,
but Ryan wasn't. Ryan Bowen wasn't. So it's like, well, I'm here. Why don't we just have the match? So Ryan Bowen and Ryan Scott. So they ended up doing that instead. It was supposed to be Lachlan Adair and Ryan Scott. But that would have been for the #1 ranking, or the sort of the perceived or agreed #1 ranking in Australia. But then Ryan Bowen took the match, because of those circumstances,
like the lineal champion.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then so Ryan ended up winning that match. So there's two
Ryan
Ryans.
Bowen.
Ryan won
Scott
against Ryan. Yeah. So Ryan Bowen was the winner against Ryan Scott in that. But he said, I don't feel like I'm #1 because I haven't beaten Lachlan, and I don't want to call myself #1, because of that reason. But we hadn't seen Ryan Scott sort of since then, and he may have competed in some tournaments that were over there, but
I've got a feeling he started training the next day, because he was very, very strong when he came to this event.
Yeah, his strength is he's a very fast, explosive puller, so he is really quick off the go. And you've mentioned Lachlan Carpenter here. Unfortunately, Lachlan coming into this tournament with a torn shoulder, so he was facing an injury, couldn't put any side pressure on at all. Didn't want to pull out. He wanted to give it his best effort, but we'll see what happens in this. So I'll press the play button. So we're going to get the grip up. But it was great to have both of these gentlemen here. In fact, every one of the athletes that was competing on the card, we were very, very privileged to have come and compete with us. And so one foul for I'm not sure what the hand signal is. Talking like a duck, maybe.
Oh, yes.
It's the duck hand. I think he might have been climbing as the referee was just about to say go. But here we go. And that's traditional Ryan Scott right there. Just explosive, fast, powerful hit to the side. And Lachlan, facing that injury, wasn't able to use any side pressure to be able to contain that. But this was the exciting one. This was this was Andy's moment here. So Gunters Michaels, as you've mentioned before, an absolute legend in the world of Australian arm wrestling, having won the Australian title multiple times, many times. And then Andy Boskovsky on his rise. He was the underdog here. He he was coming into this as, I think he saw himself as, I have the ability to do really well, but he was still an up and comer at this point, going against a legend like Gunter Bykov. So we see the match start here.
Oh,
and a lot of force. They're probably going to end up in a slip. They're both top
both men
rolling.
had the same strategy here.
Yep.
And
there we go.
Now that was the stop that made everybody think a little bit.
That's right. It was like, oh, the power that was coming through the wrists of both men there. They've gone into the hook, and he's very powerful in that position. Gunter's using his back pressure there. Andy giving it absolutely everything. You see his whole body shaking there, and Gunter's the lovely gentleman.
Almost happy for him.
He's very happy. You can see how happy he is. Yeah, what a wonderful man Gunter Bykov is.
Yeah.
And I think Andy says to the camera right there, "This is Gunter's, by the way. This is Gunter's Bykovs that I just won against." So he was very, very pleased with that victory. Lachlan Carpenter here against Ryan Bowen. Again, it was unfortunate that Lachlan was facing that shoulder injury. Andy doing squats in the background there to try to get some of the blood out of his arm. It's not hit some weird dance or anything that he's doing to distract everybody.
Although it could be.
Yeah, let's say it is.
Andy has some moves.
Absolutely. So you can see here.
Oh,
there it is.
So that Ryan, I think, was scarred a little bit about losing at Series 1 and did not want to give any cause for anybody to feel like Lachlan Carpenter was about the leapfrogging in the estimations of the arm wrestling world.
But you can see the speed of this, like even just watching it now. It's like I didn't, we weren't going to be doing a whole review of the entire event, but we've done so many already, and it's just like that's how fast these matches are taking place, and they're telling the story straight away. Because now you've got Rickard Borman against Matarangi Hannah Morris. They both won their first match. Okay, well they're still in the winners bracket. That's why I loved the tournament structure and the tournament format that we ran with, because as the viewer, you get to click into it and straight away. It's only been 7 minutes, and we've had 4 or 5 matches that we've seen, and not good matches, but top level matches. Like it's not like just some random guys in the tournament at the low level. It's like, no, these are the best guys we got around the place. And so you're seeing that straight away. And the entire video runs 23 minutes. You're seeing the entire event run through in that 23-minute period.
And Matteo Arongi at the moment is recovering from surgery, having just had an operation on his ear, as he was having some difficulties there as a result of an old injury where there was a little hole that had developed behind his eardrum that was pushing through and slowly growing through and getting uncomfortably close to the brain cavity.
Jeez.
And so had that operated on, and unfortunately it doesn't appear that the New Zealand medical system quite has an operating bed quite big enough to accommodate the beast. And so Matteo Arongi has experienced some nerve damage as a result of having been on the operating table for 5 hours with his nerves being impinged in his arms. So we hope that Matteo Arongi is back very, very soon and back to full strength, and praying for his recovery. So so a shame to hear that news coming out of New Zealand, but I'm sure he'll be back to full strength soon and back on the arm wrestling tables of the world, showing the world why New Zealand deserves a place there.
Yes, absolutely.
In the world of arm wrestling. So that was a great event, and of course I think most people will remember AWE Grand Prix 1 as as where they may have first heard about Rickard Borman, the young South African, 21 years old, 125 kilos, 6'3", 6'4". He is the phenom. He has certainly emerged in 2024 as one of the athletes to watch. If you're looking for somebody who maybe on the scene as a top 10 athlete in the not too distant future, then Rickard Borman is your man. And it's He's back in South Africa at the moment, resting up. Last time he did that, he went back home for Christmas. He came back 20% stronger. So excited to see what might be going on, or what his mum's feeding him. Actually, I'm very curious to know what's on the table at night time, because
him and his brother,
Duval is he's 116 years old, 110 kilos, and challenging Riekert on the training table. So Riekert Bouwman really came out of that event as being one of the most hyped and discussed arm wrestling athletes in the world.
Yeah, I think it was. So he won the tournament, went through completely undefeated, four pins in a row against some of the top guys that we had in the Southern Hemisphere, and then I think the thing that really got a lot of attention was Lachlan Adair, who was sort of the consensus #1 in Australia at this time, and more than likely, I mean, he hasn't lost that title. He was there in the after pools, and I think he'd been at work, and so he got there maybe an hour after the after pool had started or whatever. And there was a great video of him and Riekert on the after pool table, and Riekert was looking very dominant in that after pool, and I think that got a lot of people going, "Oh, geez, okay, wow, this guy's legitimately strong."
Yeah.
Like he is.
And I think we're about an hour into after pool at that stage as well. And
Yeah, and he just won the tournament.
just beating the best in the Southern Hemisphere, and where a tournament where he was, I think, maybe the only athlete to not have been a national champion at some level as well. So, it's quite remarkable.
So the phone was ringing hot, and we were getting offers and calls from all of the biggest organizations around the world wanting Riekert to compete on their cards, and lots of potential opponents. And yeah, so we've lined things up for Riekert, and yeah, so but the first thing that he wanted to do was that he wanted to defend that belt, the AWE heavyweight belt, which was he was awarded that for winning the Grand Prix tournament. Very proudly, he's the owner of that, and you know, he was very thankful in his post-match speech, and you know, he's thanked his family, and there was some tears, and you know, he was very, very proud to be part of the AWE and to become the heavyweight champion. So when we were looking at doing our next event, it was, well, we really enjoyed that, you know, the Grand Prix format. Let's do the same thing. And so he was very much on board, wanting to defend his title, and it's like, no one's going to take this title from me. Like, you know, so get whoever you want to, and get the biggest people you can, and the best guys you can. And that's what we did. We went and found the biggest people we could find, and we put it together, AWE Grand Prix 2.
Should we go to Grand Prix 2 now? Sure. Because the first 10 seconds, if you see that, you'll just almost the hype video for Grand Prix 2 is Riekert beating everybody in AWE Grand Prix 1. And so we'll clear that video in. So we want to thank everybody for their wonderful support. Our videos on YouTube over this last 12-month period have now had over 100,000 views. So thank you so much for all of the support. Our Instagram page is constantly getting messages, and the stats just keep rising. So thank you to the arm wrestling fans that get behind our athletes, get behind what we're doing, and want to see more. So this is the little hype video where you see Riekert working his way through the AWE Grand Prix 1 field. And so the real challenge here was, okay, well, we've got to find some fresh faces that are credible opponents here to Riekert Bouwman, and maybe even find amongst them the next Riekert Bouwman, the next name that nobody's heard of, that we can elevate and get onto the international scene. So
great job with the editing here as well, both yourself and Joseph putting this together. And you know, it's one of those fun things to be able to look back at it now. Like during doing it, it's bloody stressful, pulling your bloody hair out to get all this thing happening. But when you can look back at it and know that it all came together with fantastic graphics and transitions, and you know, we're very, very pleased with the end product. So yeah, we had Tyler Harrison stepping in. We did have a couple of last minute injuries.
Well, Tyler was on the list, wasn't he, to be part of the round robin qualifier event for this, and due to Taryn's last minute pullout, and
Taryn, there was who else?
There would have been Las Bolter from South Africa,
Hamza,
Stretch. Oh, that's right.
Tahitian Giant.
Yeah, the Tahitian Giant. So we had like those 5 athletes. So just as well, we had this this little tournament backup, and so the idea was that there would be like a mini qualifier tournament just before AWE Grand Prix, and that the winner of that tournament would be seeded 8th in this event and find their way into it. So, but as it turns out, Tyler Harrison was able to dodge all the bullets and make his way into the final 8, and so he seeded 8 against the number 1 seed, the current champion Rickard Borman, here in the first round. So,
but yeah, the exciting thing is like looking at the production side of things here. So we've gone from Marcus Nero's shed into one of the function rooms here at in Adelaide. It was at the Grand Chancellor Hotel, and yeah, I think it really came together very nicely. We had a sold out room that was completely full.
120 people there, which you don't quite get an appreciation from some of these camera angles, but 120 people crammed around that table.
And very invested in what was going on. And people flew in from all around the country to see the event, which is, you know, absolutely fantastic to have that support. You know, you're talking to someone, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm from Melbourne." And it's like, "Oh, really? Like you flew over for this? This is amazing! And thank you so much for coming over." And you know, and there was several people there who'd never seen arm wrestling before, but we had Grant Law, who had helped us with getting in the local newspapers and helping with media and to promote the event as much as we could. And they had seen that, and they're like, "Oh, we just wanted to come by and see what this was all about." And you know, they stuck around the whole time, and I saw them on the after pool table as well. It was like, oh, this is great. These people have never done this before, and now they're maybe becoming fans of the sport.
Yeah, there was a few people there that hadn't previously had any exposure to arm wrestling, but were there just because they heard that there was an event and thought it looked like fun, and then were quite surprised at the professionalism and the production and how the room looked, and then we're quite pleased to be part of the after pool as well. So,
oh, you mean we get to get on with the guys that were competing? Well, that's cool.
Yeah. So, because I think one of the cool things about watching a competition, you think, you know,
I'd smash that dude.
I probably would have won.
I'd destroy him. They're lucky. They're lucky I didn't compete.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, come on the table then. Come on against the 50 kilo guy here.
This is Josh Barker.
Yeah. Josh, man. God, he's beaten 160 kilo guys.
Wow. Yeah, Josh Barker. Josh Barker's forearm, I think, is now actually
its own separate
thicker
entity.
Than his thigh. Yeah.
It's registered as a different person.
And this is Stephen Carroll, who's also an up-and-coming local talent who's been performing very well over the last 6 or so months, and so he was also in the mix for that round robin qualifier.
Yes,
and made his way through, and so he was seeded 7th and was up against our 2nd seed here, Brett Coots, who we've been talking about a lot already in the podcast today. 105 kilos, coming in a little heavier than at the previous event. And
look at that behemoth right there.
20-inch arms. The man is a specimen.
That's the funniest thing for me is the transition, because he's like, okay, you got 3 guys before, and Rickard is a big guy, but you know, it's like, okay, Stephen comes out, and Stephen's lost some weight recently, and you know, he's getting in quite decent shape, and but then it goes, okay, Stephen Carroll, and then it's like his opponent. It's like he's going against the Hulk. It's like, oh my god,
it's He-Man in a hat. That's good luck.
That's right.
You're up against an action figure.
The shirt barely hanging on to Brett's arms was more of a challenge here than I think the match, but but Stephen very happy to get the opportunity, and this is what I really liked about him. He's always putting his hand up and saying, like, I want to get matches, I want to get exposure, I want to get international opportunities, and you know, he's improving as every week he gets better. He's always working on his technique. He recently went over to Singapore and had matches over there.
Did you go to Indonesia as well?
Yeah. And so he's looking. He's one of those guys that's out there looking for opportunities and trying to make things happen. Which, you know, that's your ideal thing. As if you're a promoter, it's like, well, you know, if somebody's coming to you going, please put me on. Like, this is my, you know, I'm keen. I'll be there. I'll pay my own way. I'll get there. You know,
I think he took on Indonesia's top guy.
Yeah.
And didn't walk away with the victory, but learned a lot.
Yes.
And this is what, as a promoter, as you say, this is what we want to see. We want to see the athletes that are vested, that are trying to do everything they can to get themselves ahead. And Stephen's definitely been putting in the miles over the last 6 or 12 months, and showing us all that he's willing to do everything it takes in order to build his name, his profile in the sport.
Absolutely, yes. He's been working hard. Got the opportunity here. It is going to be difficult when you go against the number 1 or the number 2 seed straight away in the tournament, but that is what the advantage of having the double elimination is. That okay, look, I'm probably going to get wiped out in this first round, but I do get a chance in the second round. Maybe it's somebody else that has already lost the match.
Yeah.
Hopefully they've been in a war. Maybe they're a bit tired, and then I've got an opportunity to maybe sort of work my way in and beat some people that I've never faced before or never had.
And there really was a first round war here, and I think it was between the 4th and 5th seeds, Charles
What
Puri
a war.
and Marcus Atirai, who absolutely went to town. So the first couple of matches kind of did go like this, and then you get to that matchup, and that's where the opportunity arises for athletes on both sides of the seeded equation to take advantage of that war that happens in the middle, and so that's why some of these results that might kick up from Grand Prix are going to be, in some cases, anomalous, and in other cases, a real reflection as to somebody's potential. And so Alex McKinnon was who's the dragster out of Canberra, who was recently dominant in their state tournament or their territory tournament there. Sustaining an injury there, there was definitely a noise. There was definitely a pop. Alex felt it. Ryan felt it. Ryan was still trying to push towards the pad just in case it was going to count. You will notice. But Tim Graham, who was the referee, just explaining to Ryan there that no, it wasn't quite a win. We'll take it as a foul, I think, was the agreement there.
Yeah, so I think it was the correct call. I mean, looking back at it, and I'm glad that Tim made this call, but it was an elbow foul first, and then Alex has pulled away like, oh, I've done something, and we were very concerned that he was injured, which it turns out he has torn some ligament in his elbow.
Yes,
but he still competed, and not only competed in the rest of this match, but competed throughout the rest of the tournament. And did quite well, despite sustaining that injury.
Makes you wonder as well, what if he hadn't had that pop in this very first round, and was because you'll see that Alex is very competitive throughout his matchups, and again emerged. I think Alex is around 100 kilos thereabouts, and so on that cusp of heavyweight, doesn't perhaps quite have the frame of a Rickett Bauman, where sitting comfortably at super heavyweight is going to be the option. So carving out a space for himself in the heavyweight category, and you'll see that Alex has got a lot of heart in one of these upcoming rounds. So Alex was a real success story for me out of this event, and somebody who now deserves to be part of the conversation at 100 kilos.
Yeah, he was real the standout star for sure throughout the event, and he had some tremendous moments throughout the tournament. It's so good to have him there, and he wasn't a part of the original lineup. He was he'd won tickets to the event. And I think he'd messaged Ryan and said, I've won tickets. I'm booking my flights now to come over to watch the event.
Yeah,
and like about 20 minutes before that he'd sent that message, we'd had somebody pull out with an injury.
That's right.
Like,
yeah.
Well, if you're coming over anyway,
that's right.
Would you like to compete? Because but I've always known him as the Canberra Dragster, even though that's the thing. This is why it's easier for me to remember people by their nickname than their real name. And Ryan's like, oh, Alex McKinnon in this message, I think he would be a really good replacement, and he's coming. Like he's going to be there anyway. And I was like, who's Alex McKinnon? And he goes, oh, he's right out of Canberra. He won their state titles. He was really dominant. He's been pulling for a few years now. He's been getting better and better. And I'm like, I don't know who it is. Like, but and then even he showed me a video, but the video was very poor quality. And I was like, I didn't recognize him. And then at some point, maybe like 4 days later, he said, "Oh, the drags," and I was like, "Oh, he's Alex McKinnon of the Drags. I know the Dragster. Yes, of course. He's great. He's awesome. Yeah, I know who you mean now. He's great. Yeah, he's a very top level puller. So
it's a little bit like Andy Boskovsky's experience at Grand Prix One to me, where all of a sudden it's like, he's one of the lighter guys, especially when you start comparing him against the, like the giant men that are on screen right now.
Yeah.
And so one of the lighter guys, but was able to prove himself to be really competitive and punched above his weight. So, Andy Boskovsky versus Alex McKinnon might be a very interesting matchup in 2025.
I like that. Nobody else get that booked.
That's it.
We caught it first.
That's right. We can timestamp it. But here, Charles Puri and Marcus Itirai. This was a real war. So this is really where the seeds met in the middle. And so we've got 4th and 5th seed, I think, on the table here. And Marcus Itirai, an absolute giant of a human being. I mean, 160 odd kilos and 6'4" and Charles Puri, who is a beast in his own right, but at 125 kilos.
He's come up in weight as well recently, because I think he used to compete in the under 100 kilos, and he was doing quite well there, and he's increased in weight since then. And obviously here he's going. We were very happy to have both these guys match up against each other, and it was sort of like when we were doing the seedings, it was who we're going to put in which spot, and 4th and 5th for both these guys, it was like they're sort of interchangeable here, and it didn't really make a difference as to whether Charles was 4th or Charles was 5th, and the other way around. They were going to be facing each other in the first round.
Yeah.
And what a war! This was
a great matchup. This is
for
very
sure.
very entertaining. And Charles Puri, number 2 in New Zealand.
That's right.
For the last several years, behind Mate Arangi.
Yeah, so Marcus on the left of screen is utilizing the King's move, and you can see him dropping down into that position there. They do get a slip. I'll skip through to the strap and we'll get the start, because that's the interesting moment.
Yeah, Charles was able to keep his hand very, very close to his shoulder, and he was able to maintain that positioning for a very, very long time. And
so this was, and you remember, this is the opening round of the tournament.
Yes.
But this is one of those things where the King's move, if they're in that position, and you see how Marcus's hand is pronated and he has not been turned palm up at all. Charles, to me, taking a deep breath there, he's surging. Marcus is just waiting here. He's just waiting for his opportunity to come up and go through and finish the match, and he's letting Charles burn himself out. But he was surprised. He said to me afterwards, like, I was looking at Charles like, what are you doing? Like, why are you burning both of us out here in the opening round? This is bad for both of us. And
Charles did not want to lose. He didn't care. He held on to that.
That's right. So in this position, ideally, and I'm going to pause it for a second while I explain this. So Marcus is in a dominant King's move position, and he's preventing Charles from being able to get through. What Charles needs to do, and this is easy for me to say, sitting here very comfortably, not having any sort of chance against Marcus Itirai, but ideally he would come forwards with his elbow and get more height vertically with his forearm, climb his hand over the top of Marcus's hand, and continuously be doing that to increase his own leverage, which will eventually turn Marcus's pronation over. But you can see Charles, incredibly strong top roller. He's sitting in a classic position here and utilizing all of his strength. But the King's mover is that's what they want you to do. They want you to do that because you can't get any further than that position for them. They're fully locked out, and it's like, well, I'm this high above the pad. You're this close to winning, but you're not going to get any further unless you turn my hand over. And so that's what we saw here, is that Charles is using so much energy trying to just force the arm down, but he needed to come forwards, get height, and then work his hand over the top. And as I said, this is it's only armchair expert analysis. Completely different when you're on the table and you've got 165 kilos of back pressure pulling against you.
Yes, exactly. Well, Marcus Tirai here is just starting that transition, starting to come through, and there we go. It was all over. And Charles had absolutely given his all there, and Marcus was forced to dig deep in order to make his way through to the winner's side of the bracket.
Yeah, well, that was only the first round.
That was the
so this is first to
first
two.
round.
Then we did get another war between the two of them in the second, which I'll skip through to. I think they do slip. Yeah, so we go to the strap and we'll get that going. But if you look at the difference on the faces between the two competitors, Marcus is very relaxed. He's very comfortable in that spot. Charles is giving it everything he's got. And, I think that really affected his ability to compete for the rest of the tournament, because he was breathing heavy for the rest of the tournament. Basically, we even had an intermission and stuff like that. And by the time he got to the table for his next match, he was still, out of breath.
Yeah.
But that is one of the things that happens in tournament pulling, and that's one of those exciting elements that makes you go, well, I don't know what's going to happen, because anything could happen depending on what happens with the matches coming up preceding you.
Well, it certainly made life a little easier for Rickard Baumann and Brett Coots. So they're forever grateful. But I absolutely love Charles's endeavour here. Like,
Yes.
he did not want to see an L against his name. He absolutely gave it his all here, and wasn't willing to strategize or compromise or roll over just to give himself an easier lane maybe for his next matchup. He was all about see Marcus getting a little frustrated there as well.
Yeah, well, he was testing. So with that, those bumps, because Charles was taking moments to rest and catch his breath. He was coming up, and you see him deep, really deep, with no pressure. And then Marcus is recognized he's not pressuring there. I'm gonna start swinging your arm around for a second, so that you've got to re-engage yourself. Because he wasn't in a position to be able to just push right through. He needs to come up with his body to do that. But he could bump with his arm, which is forcing Charles to re-engage and not get his opportunity to catch his breath.
So
that's what we saw. I'll just replay that little bit there. Bumping there, making Charles work, and then coming up for the press.
He just wasn't able to come back from that one. So it was that was brutal. And so up until this point, the match has been quite quick and really just setting up the winner for the next round. But that matchup saw the tide turn a little bit, and all of a sudden, these two athletes in the middle of the seeding had made it a little easier, or a little easier for everybody else, and a little harder for themselves. And here we have the new improved version of Ryan Bowen competing at 90 kilograms, so making him one of the lightest athletes in this lineup.
I think he was the lightest, actually.
He was, at 90 kilos. So this is certainly a very different man to the one we saw at Grand Prix 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And again, we've said that he's very desperate to get a victory over Brett Coots. This was another opportunity to be able to do that.
Brett had just quietly reminded him, I think, just before the event, that Ryan hadn't yet enjoyed a pin against Brett, although he did come very, very close in the last event. And Brett had since that event put on 5 kilos, and Ryan had lost close to 20. Almost 20 kilos.
Looks like a different man there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks like he's 20 kilos lighter and 20 years younger.
Did you see that photo? Did he show that photo of him on the beach with the moustache?
It looks like his dad, who's a police officer, but it was him just 3 months ago. Yeah, it's incredible.
It was like a different person.
It really is. It really is. I'm hoping Ryan reposts that photo. The before and the after, maybe.
I think he might have put it on his Instagram, but there you go. His big hit from Ryan, which gets caught by Brett. Ryan dropping into the King's move. Brett working hard to get the press, but he's able to get through.
And as we've learned, even in this podcast, once Brett gets that stop, he's very, very difficult to win against thereafter.
Did you get on the table with Brett at all?
No, I don't think I did. He was on the table with Ashley Hoyter, who's also trained by Mate Arungi. So, and of course, Mate Arungi loves a top roll,
Yes.
and Brett is, he's the master of the hook here in Australia, and he identified in Ashley that her real lane is as a hooker.
Yeah.
And of course, Ashley had been spending a lot of time trying to perfect top rolling, and had enjoyed success because she is just so strong. She's got that raw power. But as soon as Brett started coaching her in the ways of the hooking,
The ways of the hook.
the
ways of the hooker.
She got to,
That sounds terrible.
The ways of the hooking. That's what I said. So once Brett was starting to share with us some of the secrets, there all of a sudden Ashley's confidence started to go up, and so Brett shared with her a little master class in the craft of hook arm wrestling.
Yeah.
And Ashley kind of felt like she'd learned a lot through that, and she was actually really quite excited to meet Brett Coates, knowing his reputation, and was absolutely rapt to be able to get that little bit of advice in the after pool that she's definitely going to deploy against competitors in 2025.
That was really a cool thing, and I didn't realize that she was like so excited to meet all the arm wrestlers from Australia until in particular, absolutely. Until we were at the dinner afterwards, and we were sitting on the same table. So it was Brett and his wife Natalie, and then Ashley and her mother, myself and you were there. And then Brett got up, I think it went to the bathroom or something. And Ashley was like, I can't believe I get to meet Brett Coates. This is insane. This is crazy. It was like, oh, yeah, like, well, I didn't realize. It was really cool to see that she was a big fan. So that was fantastic. And of course, on the day you were doing the MC work, you were hyping the crowd up and getting everyone pumped out for every event. You were introducing all the competitors before each match, and it did keep the energy up in the room, and people were very excited, and you could feel that there was it felt like a really big event, and I've heard a lot of people saying afterwards, I didn't know it was going to be like that. I didn't know it was going to be like this big, rock star kind of event, and I had no idea that the level of production and everything was going to be as good as it was. And I'm like, yeah, well, we're trying to do,
So our ambition was, and so just for folks who've been following our journey, when the Indian arm wrestling, when the Indian arm wrestlers weren't able to get here on time for the event that we had planned, we'd already paid for the room. We'd booked the room and already made the arrangements for the AV teams and basically laid all the groundwork there, but then had to put it all on ice. And the venue were kind enough to say, hey, just whenever you're ready, like we'll still be here. So just let us know. And so as we started planning for this event, we thought, you know what, we've got that room. Why don't we just kind of run with that same concept? And that we were planning for the AWE 2 event or 3 event, sorry, and just let's do that. So we went down, and they were able to accommodate our dates, and we re-engaged the AV guys and started planning for what we wanted to be the representation of the standard that we would like to see the sport presented. We personally feel that as great as King of the Table and East versus West have been in restoring people's interest in sport post-COVID and creating a pathway for the top names in the sport, there's little left to be desired when it comes to the production side of things. And and in some cases it's quite the shame to see that these are the biggest names in the sport, and there's tens of thousands of people buying the pay-per-view, but the quality of the production is a little average, and not to the standard that you might equate to, say, any other top level sport in the world.
Right.
So we just wanted to show that on a shoestring budget, with very little by way of resources and without the big sponsorship money or anything like that, that we were able to put on a world-class event that respectfully represented the aspirations of the athletes and shone a light on the sport in the most positive way possible. And,
Absolutely.
And I think we're largely successful in that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm very, very happy with how the end product came out, and especially like doing service for the people that came out to compete with us. And it's like, if they can proudly show this to and saying, look, this is me, and people go, oh, wow, like, this is real, like
you're a superstar.
I didn't realize that you were going to get this whole intro, and there you are there doing on the mic doing the intros. And it's one of my favorite things watching it back, especially when I was doing the editing side, and yourself when you were doing the editing with Joseph, was some of the walk-ins, like the different reactions, because I don't think the athletes realized that they were going to get a big introduction.
We did tell them. We were kind enough to let them know, all right, you're going to stand up, we're going to say your name, we're going to read it a little bit, and then away you go.
But just the way that certain people would walk in compared to others.
Yes.
And some people would be very sheepishly, oh, God, everyone's looking at me. Like,
and others look like WWE superstars.
Like, yes, this is my moment. So good, so funny. But yeah, just seeing the different reactions, but everyone smiling, everyone enjoying it, enjoying your level of enthusiasm, and cheering. And obviously you do the ring announcing work, so you're introducing them like they're the fighter coming out to fight, and that's what we were doing here. It was like, well, you're coming out as a competitor to compete in this. It is a combat sport.
Yeah.
So, but it was very, very exciting. And people in the room, you could see that everyone's smiling, like, yes, this is, the energy was up. One thing that I didn't realize was that everyone in the room could hear what me and Jake were saying.
Almost, yeah, you could. Well, it did depend. You guys weren't mic'd for the room at all, but there were occasions where, especially Jake, because Jake can be especially exuberant, and there was some. You'll hear the crowd laugh on a couple of occasions. Overhear some of the commentary. So
that's right, and the competitors as well, because we were talking about Alex McKinnon's elbow, and that he was still able to compete and compete so well even after the injury. And I think Jake said something like, he sold us the dummy. Maybe this was his thing. He's going to pretend to be injured. And Alex is like, he's gripping it. He's looked up and he's like, yeah. I was like, oh, they can hear what we're saying.
Well, essentially this camera angle right here is your view. So this camera is set up right in front of the commentary desk, which was on an elevated platform and looked over. So from there, that's the shot.
Yeah, for sure. And it was great. It was a great view, and it was so good to see so many top level competitors competing and be able to do the commentary work and be there with Jake and hear your announcing work going on. So I think from all the elements that we had control over, I think they all came together fantastically. Very happy with the way it looked. We loved the black and the red and all the rest of it. And so one of those things that's fun about this is you put these events together, and then the next time you do it, it's like, okay, these are the things that we need to improve on, or these are the things that we can make better. But I think overall, like, I was very, very pleased with the outcome. I love you can still see the crowd in the background there, just subtly, but the athletes are lit up really well with the lighting, but not blown out. And I just think it all sort of came together so well. And I loved having the microphone on the referee as well.
Yeah, that was a great touch. And we've had this all critiqued by an industry expert who's come back to us with some great suggestions and some wonderful positive feedback. So I'm sure you're going to see an even better, more improved event and online presentation next time. So if you like the look of this event, then you're absolutely going to love what we do next. And if you haven't already made your way over to the AWE Underground channel, then our best suggestion is do that, please. Please subscribe. The more support that we can get, it is our only means of getting our content out there, which is via YouTube. So we're not charging pay-per-views. We are trying to provide the biggest platform and the easiest accessibility to our content, which is make it free and put it on the biggest platform in the world. And so, in so doing, all we need is really your support and your views to make this business case work out. So thanks to everybody who's already watched that particular event, of which I think there's 11 or 12,000 people that have already jumped online and had a look. And for the 70 or so thousand people that watched the first event, thank you very much. We appreciate all your support. And but if you haven't already, please subscribe to the AWE Underground channel and to the AWE T Series channel, because that's where you'll see more of our podcasts and AWE updates in the weeks and months to come.
Yeah, for sure. Should we wrap things up there, do you think?
Sounds great. So takeaways from 2024?
Very pleased. I think we ran 3 great events and improved every time. We got a lot of stories out there. Some of the top level Australian arm wrestlers and international as well in this region, especially people that may have never had the opportunity before to be seen on an international stage, which was just an absolute privilege to be able to provide that for people. And a lot of fun. Obviously, we both love the sport. We're passionate about the sport, wanting to give people the best opportunity to have a career and be paid and become a professional athlete in the world of arm wrestling. So I think we took 3 big leaps forward of doing that, and becoming a very viable promotion, especially recognized worldwide. As if people think Australia, they think, well, okay, well, AWE is the one to go to in Australia.
Yeah, well, yeah. I echo all of those sentiments and thoughts there, and I think we have come out of the wilderness now. I think we've got a stronger idea, but because we were going down a very similar road to all of the other big promotions in the world, which was running super match events and pay-per-view events. And when that model was no longer available to us, it really did send us out there to discover what it is that might work. And, if something works at a smaller scale, normally it works at a bigger scale. And so from our perspective, it was like, well, we had some experimentation to do, and we want to thank our audience for having the patience to see us through that time whilst we were working through what it is that AWE means and what kind of platform we're able to deliver the athletes. And and that took the form of T-Series events and of course the first Grand Prix event, and then the event we've just shared with you at Grand Prix 2. So I feel like we've gone away. Circumstances have forced us to reconsider format. So I think we've come back with a winning format. I think due to resource availability, money, all of those things, we had to really, think how it is that we can put together a world-class presentation of the sport, but without spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on it. And I think we've enjoyed success there. And thirdly, I think we've enjoyed success in shining light on some of the regional talent that we've very, very fortunate to have here in Australia and New Zealand, and to let the rest of the world know about it. And so, if you're an arm wrestler in the world now, you know about Rickard Ballman. If you know about Charles Puri, you know about Marcus Iturai, Andy Boskovsky, Lachlan Carpenter. These are all names that arm wrestling fans around the world are very, very familiar with now, and we can't wait to unearth more talent just like that, and to see where some of these new names go in 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been amazing. It's been absolutely incredible. Never thought this would be happening. When you step into an arm wrestling training room for the first time, and for me it was Tim Graham's driveway.
the referee of the AWE
right.
Grand Prix 2 event was Tim Graham. And that was your first exposure to arm wrestling.
That's right. And it's like, okay, and if somebody had said to me, you're going to be traveling the world doing this sport here and podcasting with some of the biggest names in the sport internationally, and going and spending a month in India. It's like, hang on, what? Going to Ireland, putting on big events here in Australia with some of the best people that are in the country and around this region. It's like, hang on a sec, what? That can't be real. So it's almost like living a dream for me, which has been absolutely incredible.
Well, Well, it's a dream to be able to work with you.
Well, thank you.
Matt Connolly, and very, very happy birthday for yesterday as well.
Thank you.
And wishing you very many, many more and much more success in 2025. And to all of you that have been tuning in, thank you very much. We really appreciate everything, and really, we can't wait for 2025 to kick off, and we've got a whole lot more in store.
Absolutely. Thanks again, guys. We will end it there. Actually, we'll do one last double biceps. I've got to put that in. It is for the contract. Oh, all right.